Welcome to That's Joy, the podcast. I'm your host, Cece Calbanero, and I'll be sharing stories of miracles, God moments, and unpacking the truth behind what joy truly means. My friend, when God gives you a direct call on your life, be sure to answer it. Here's to answering my call together. Hello, and welcome back to That's Joy, the podcast. I am your host, Cece, and I am so glad that you hit play today. Friends, I've missed you. I have been traveling. We packed up our entire lives in Nashville, sold 80% of everything that we have owned, and we're on the road. We are officially on the road, and I'm recording right now from a brand new place. If you're watching this on YouTube or this little clip, then hello, I am inside of a studio, inside of an industrious, through a beautiful friend's connection, and I'm just so grateful for connections because it allowed us to find a space where we can record and click play again. And so I just want to take a second to just be grateful that we found a place so quickly and that we are together and reunited. And that is my joyful noise. So if you are new to That's Joy, the podcast, you might not know this, but we kick off every episode with a little joyful noise. My version of joyful noise just means good news. Like, where the heck is the good news? How do we find more of that? Well, it's right here. And so my joyful noise for today is the fact that we are together. We're officially nomading, Jonathan and I, and it was honestly, like, if I'm being for real, it was pretty sad moving out of our first apartment because not only was it our first apartment together, but it was our first home as a married couple together. So I feel like we created so many special memories inside of the grand, 760 square foot apartment, something like that. She was small, but she was perfect for us in that season. And so of course, changes are still hard, goodbyes are still hard, even though there is excitement and so much joy on the other side of that goodbye and of this yes. So this yes, you might be like, well, where are you recording from, Cece? Where are you guys right now? We are in the Bay Area of California, where I was born and raised, and I'm so grateful to be spending a handful of weeks surrounded by my family. It's been years, like quite literally since 2020 COVID happened, where I moved back in with my mom after I lost my dream job, which if you listen to That Joy, you know that story. Go back to a handful of different episodes if you don't know that story yet, because it is profound. And it's been about 4 years, nearing up on 5 years since I've lived or stayed in this part of California for more than 2 weeks. And so we've been here now for 2 weeks, and I'm happy to say that we finally have found our rhythm, and I want to share an upcoming episode, so stay tuned for that, about habits and how to have habits while traveling, and just like Healthy Girl Habits Part 2, because y'all love that first one so much. So I want to put out another one like that, but we're here and we're doing the dang thing. And you clicked play on today's episode for a reason. I bet that title got ya, because it sure as heck got me. A couple weeks ago, before we moved, I had this episode title and topic on my heart because honestly, we're in it right now, y'all. Like, we're in the thick of the building right now. And so I just have so many micro moments with myself and with Jonathan as we're building our company, Social Crew, our social media agency. We're building that up, and it's taking a lot of effort, right? And then I have that joy, and truthfully, the numbers have fallen a bit. And so the downloads are down, and I'm behind the scenes working and trying to ideate on how to get the numbers back up. And then my social channels, it's a big goal of mine, and I've shared that with you guys. One of my personal goals is to replace my 9-to-5 income with content creation income. And so that's not going to come easy at all, and it has not. If you follow me on Instagram, you might have noticed just the different creative taste and flair that I've infused into my social channels to set myself apart and to build upon something in the direction of where I wish to go in the next year, 2 years, 5 years. And so you'll see all of those things happen across my CC and That's Joy brand. And I'm excited. I'm excited about all of it. And while I carry excitement, I also, in the other hand, carry a large dose of reality. And what I mean by that is, I mean that while we are in the middle of the build, friends, we're not even in the middle in the sense of like financially we're seeing the ROI above what we have imagined. We're having a great month in the month of February right now. We have large, ambitious goals similar to what you probably have, and that's why you clicked play. And so I want this episode more than anything just to not only encourage you, but to encourage myself. Like, this is the chat that we just need to reassess, realign, roll up our sleeves, and get to work. Okay, so I know that a lot of you are probably listening to this right now. You're a dreamer, you're someone who is easily inspired, and you're ready to go. You're like, all right, give me the tools, tell me what I need to do. And I love that so much about us. And we also need to recognize that, like, even while we can be wired that way, it still is going to look a touch different than what we pictured. Just how it goes. And I've shared this tons on the podcast, and I'm sure there are probably a small fraction of you who are like, all right, we get it. You love your plants. There's another part of you guys who are listening who you're like, girl, every time you speak about those plants and the oohs and ahs of what God is teaching you through that plant, I am inspired. And so I want to speak to you, and hopefully if you are tired of the plant lessons, that you just pull back your earbuds and pull back your hair, I guess you should say, lean into your earbuds and just hear me out on this one. I was moving out, right? We were packing all of our things. And by the way, so much stuff. Like, why do we have so much stuff? I mean, you guys, countless amount of bags ready to go to Goodwill, countless amount of things that I found as far as sweaters and shirts and pants and things that I just have not worn because I've outgrown that style, or it's just not my favorite thing anymore, that have been sitting under the bed or in the closet hanging behind all of the hangers that I use the most. So much stuff, right? Also, packing up, and I'm trying to figure out the best ways to transport my little plants. I only have about 5 or 6 of them, I believe, to Jonathan's parents' house where my sister-in-law can take care of them. And so I have been watching them over the last couple of weeks because I always want to make sure that they're thriving. And we do and have traveled a bit over the last year. And so there are moments where, I think I shared this before, but my fiddle fig tree leaf plant that's really big and luscious, and she was beautiful, and I talked about her a lot. She completely died because one day in our apartment we had floor-to-ceiling windows that essentially surrounded the perimeter of our apartment, and it got so cold during one season while we were gone. I think it was, last February maybe, I forget, but it froze out. It killed all of the leaves, and one by one they just fell off. So that was catastrophic in a lot of ways. But more recently, I've been nurturing our plants to make sure that they're healthy. And I have noticed so much new budding that has occurred. I'm talking like there's a little plant that I bought with Taylor. She got me a gift card to the place where we first bought our fiddle fig leaves. And so we went on a girls' trip to go grab these new plants. And it's probably a succulent that's about like that big, right? And there were 2 new little kitty plants, baby plants being raised up underneath the big mama plant. And I was like, holy moly, this base is not going to hold these 3 plants for long. Like, I've got to repot this. I've got to get something new. And you know what's so interesting? I slept over at Taylor's apartment and I noticed how much her plants were also going through a growth season. But we both were so in shock because we're like, it's winter. Are they supposed to go through growth seasons in the winter? And while I didn't research this, again, I feel like God has been speaking to me through my plants. Call me crazy, but I'm taking the lessons that I have learned and the little oohs and ahs of life in every direction, and I'm running with them if they feel good and they apply. And what I've been realizing through my plants is that there's so much that takes place where the roots have to get so strong underneath. It's in the dark. It's in the areas where people can't see, where these strong roots are actually building the foundation needed for this plant to flourish. And y'all, there's countless scripture about this, right? Like so much scripture that points us to growth in plants. I want to research one right now. But so many different things. And I kept thinking about that too, of just like, wow, all of our plants have such a beautiful way of speaking to us because of their growth. I mean, the growth is so beautiful. And so I just want to encourage whoever's listening in this moment that it's all for something. And even though it might feel like you're in the dark in some areas of your life or your growth or your dreams, it's not wasted. And in fact, I think that plants teach us something special, because when we buy a plant, there's no prescription or guarantee in how big that plant will get, right? Even if you ask gardeners, how big is this plant anticipated to get, or how many new leaves should it bud up from, right? They can only give you an average. But think about your life. You're probably building one that is hopefully in your eyes going to be better than what the average is, because I know that people listening to That's Joy, you're not interested in average, you're interested in God's best. And so I just get curious if we would continue to look through that lens of growth in plants and translate that quite literally to the way that we view our dreams, our hopes, and all of our ambitions. Like, what would happen? I get so curious, like, truly, what would happen if we renewed our lens over the way that we look at our dreams? Because here's the thing, friends, you water it every day, not expecting the return tomorrow. You water it every day, not expecting the return next week or even next month. I was watering that thing every day, not even thinking about the new leaves to come. Is that not a word? I was watering it and nurturing it every single day, not watering it quite literally, but I was nurturing it every single day, ensuring that the environment was good. And I was taking care of these plants daily and being hyper intentional weekly, but I never had at the root the intention to wait on the new leaf. I was never waiting on the new leaf. I was soaking in the beauty of the plant. Can that be a word right there, y'all? I mean, there's so many ways that it just is so important to look at your growth in the same way, to look at your dreams in the same way. Will you keep showing up day in and day out, doing the daily do, even though it feels monotonous, even though it feels repetitive, right? Watering the plant is the same action. It probably looks boring if you're just looking at that action alone. But if you're looking at the greater picture of why you're doing that, to obtain the plant's beauty, right? To obtain the plant's health, and you translated that same thought into your dream. Let me show up every single day. Let me do the post every single day. Let me do the task list that I put as my top 3 every single day. And then let me look every single week and make sure I'm hitting my weekly top 3. Am I doing those things week by week? And you don't look at what your life is going to look like come next year. Instead, you stay so focused on the life that you want to build for yourself. And you're so captivated by that beauty, right? You see it like a movie playing in your mind. What if we looked at all of it always like that? What would happen? I think that we would find ourselves in positions come 5 years, come 10 years, where we would be so much more grateful that we were never caught up in the day-to-day, reaping a benefit the following day. Instead, we were enjoying the ride. Here's another part about plants that's just not talked about much. But the pruning's essential, right? You've got to trim the ends, even though it might carry a good leaf, to ensure that the best leaves would start budding up, that it would create space for them. And so I don't know who that part's for, but if you're experiencing pruning in your own life in any form, whether that's the loss of friendship, the loss of a family member, the loss of a pet, any loss of anything that you admire in your life, I hope that you are reminded that that is a level of pruning to some degree. And I'm not saying, and I don't want you to get this twisted at all, of the loss of someone you love being pruning, but and that being like something that you needed to get rid of in order to go to the next level. I'm not saying that at all. Mainly speaking, pruning for me, how it had applied was that last year I experienced loss in friendship in a way that I didn't anticipate and was not on the vision board at the top of last year. And now, after the heartache, right, come the healing. After the heartache comes the healing. And so the healing has revealed to me how much I needed the pruning, because it actually, what it did was create space for what I see God doing now. And I never want to say or share prematurely. And so God's showing me things now that I just feel like I turn around and I take a peek of what has happened and it starts to click and things just start to make a bit more sense. And it's not to say that I have all the answers or that I will, but I think you know what I mean. I wanted to share 3 quick stories with you guys that probably come a bit more unfamiliar when you hear these massive, successful names. The first one, and the first story, is Joanna Gaines. We know her, we love her, we run into Target sprinting towards that section of the store, even if we're not buying anything, simply because we love the atmosphere. We love smelling the candles. We love looking at the aspirational kitchen supplies that we don't need, but they are just so beautiful, right? I am not alone in that, and I know that. I know y'all do that too, because I am so guilty. I do buy their candles because I love their candles. But here's the thing. People don't talk about what I'm about to share enough, and you don't hear this often. What you see is the highlight reel of her products and her brand being a household brand across the globe. Like, she's everywhere and you know her, right? Well, here's what you probably wouldn't know about her. Joanna Gaines didn't get her big break until she was 36 years old, when Fixer Upper premiered in 2013. Before that, she opened a small home decor shop in Waco, Texas in 2003, but had to close it after just 1 year because they couldn't afford to keep it running. Did you guys know that? Because I didn't. I didn't know that they had to close it. Think about the financial burden of coming to that place where you realize it's doing so poorly you have to actually close it altogether. She and Chip spent the next 10 years flipping houses and barely making ends meet. In 2012, HGTV discovered them through a random blog post and offered them Fixer Upper, which turned them into quote-unquote overnight stars after actually a decade of hard work. Yo, a decade of hard work. Today, Magnolia is worth over $1 billion, and that includes restaurants, a TV network, a real estate empire, and a massive, massive retail brand we know and love inside of Target. I mean, come on, right? We just don't hear those things. We walk into Target and we're like, wow, she made it. Yeah, she made it at 36. How old are you listening to this right now? How much time do you have ahead of you? I love Gary Vee so much. I mean, aside from his cussing here and there, take his stuff with a grain of salt. There are a lot of golden nuggets that man shares. One of the things that he continuously shouts from the rooftops is how much time you have in front of you, especially if you were in your 20s. But my goodness, even if you were in your 30s, like I'm turning 30 this April, y'all. And of course, there are the natural emotions that come up of comparison. But guess what? We know this to be true. The famous quote says it, right? Comparison is the thief of joy. It's going to continuously rob you of living in joy today when you're constantly comparing. And so we cannot do that. We have to look at people who have achieved great things through the lens of inspiration, knowing that they have a story behind every success that you see that is not shared. Another one, I'm sure you know her, Sara Blakely. For my little entrepreneurs out there, you've got to follow her because she built a $1 billion brand. But something you might not know is she took 7 years of rejection before the brand Spanx became a $1 billion brand. Here's the story behind Sara Blakely that you probably have not heard before. Sara Blakely spent 7 years selling fax machines door to door in Florida before she ever launched Spanx. She came up with the idea for Spanx in 1998 at the age of 27, but had zero experience in business, design, or manufacturing. Every manufacturer she pitched turned her down until one who originally rejected her changed his mind because his daughters loved the idea. She launched Spanx in 2000, working out of her apartment and using her savings of $5,000 to get started. It took 2 whole years before Oprah named Spanx one of her favorite things in 2002, skyrocketing sales. In 2012, at age 41, she became the youngest self-made female billionaire when Spanx hit $1 billion in valuation. In 2021, she sold a majority stake in Spanx for $1.2 billion and gave all of her employees $10,000 and 2 first-class plane tickets as a thank you. Tyler Perry is another one. He was homeless. I'm sure you've heard of the Tyler Perry movies before, but he was homeless for 6 years before breaking into Hollywood. Let that soak in. Imagine going through something hard for 6 months. Imagine going through something hard for 1 year. Now, how about 2? Now, how about 6? Y'all, that's a lot of time. And he was homeless for 6 years while his hope and his dream was to break into Hollywood. Tyler Perry wrote his first play, I Know I've Been Changed, in 1992 at the age of 23, and he spent every dollar he had to produce it. The first performance, only 30 people showed up. It was a complete flop. He spent the next 6 years reworking that play, sleeping in his car, struggling to pay rent, and almost quitting multiple times. In 1998, at 29, his play finally took off, selling out in Atlanta. He turned that one success into an empire, writing over 20 stage plays before Hollywood even took notice. 20 stage plays. In 2005, at age 36, he released Diary of a Mad Black Woman, which made $50 million on a $5.5 million budget, launching his film career. In 2019, he became the first Black person to own a major film studio outright. Tyler Perry Studios is now 330 acres in Atlanta. As of 2024, his net worth is $1 billion. Is that not inspiring? Is that not just so eye-opening? When you hear all of these very successful people's names and you know what they have accomplished, very rarely do you hear what it took for them to get there. Someone that shares a lot of the what it took to help them get there is someone that I really admire, and I got the chance to meet in 2019, Jamie Kern-Lima. She also built a $1 billion brand, It Cosmetics, experiencing no's after no after no with several different people who just didn't believe in her product or the brand. And you have to read her book if you haven't yet, but it's called Believe It by Jamie Kern-Lima. It's incredibly inspiring because she was once a waitress at Denny's. Friends, all of it is a part of the story. Everything that you have ever been through, every job that you've ever had, the job that you have right now, it's a part of the story. And I want us to remember in the middle of the build that it is all for the grand picture, not for the overnight success. We know that we live in a culture right now that wants the microwave version of success. But truth be told, I don't want that. I want to lay down brick by brick, episode by episode, post by post, client by client, a brand that will be built within a strong foundation. One that has roots so strong and so deep that 2 little baby plants bud up without me even knowing that they were growing. That's the kind of success that I'm interested in. And I hope that that's the kind of success that you are also interested in. If there's anything that you hear today, I really hope that you hear this honest piece of truth that everybody needs to hear sooner rather than later. It's going to take a little bit longer than you think. And that's okay. Because you're actually right on time. You're never late. You're probably never early, but you will be right on time. Because that is God. And that's the God that we serve. He's never late. He's never early. He's right on time. So we just got to trust and believe that and be so on fire and committed to the work that we're never distracted by what hasn't come. We're instead living in a seat of anticipation for what is to come, but not through the lens of comparison, instead through the lens of gratitude. Let's get there. And it doesn't have to be next week when you get there. It doesn't have to be next month or next year when you get there. You can get to that mindset right now. I hope and I pray that this really has inspired you. I feel fired up and I feel so encouraged to remember that everything's a part of my story. It's all part of your story. The best stories aren't the ones that we watch on films where there is no hero, right? Where there is no villain. We as humans desire a story that has a hero and has a villain. So remember that the hard things are just making for a better story. I want your story to be so good that when somebody reads it back in 30 or 40 years, they're just inspired by the way that you navigated it all. So choose to navigate it well today. Will you let me know what that is? You can DM me on Instagram at CCALBONERO or on That's Joy at that'sjoypodcast.com. That's Joy the podcast. You could go to that'sjoypodcast.com to subscribe to my weekly newsletter, The Joy Corner. If you've not yet followed me on social yet, you should do that and support your girl, okay? Again, CCALBONERO. And I will say that a lot of you guys in the month of January have left a review for That's Joy on Apple podcast. And so if you have not yet done that, will you take 2 minutes to run to Apple Podcasts and do that? Even if that's not the platform that you listen to, you can still go to That's Joy on there, go down to the very bottom, write a little review on your favorite episode or what and how That's Joy has inspired you. And it is the biggest ticket to you helping me build upon my dream. And I mean that. And I thank you in advance for taking the time to do that. It means more than you know. And you can also drop a 5 stars on Spotify. Again, you don't even have to listen there. You can just type in That's Joy and write review and drop the 5 stars. I thank you so, so much for taking the time to do that. I'll never leave an episode without saying, if you have even the smallest desire to meet the creator of the universe, or if you've already been saved but you're not really free, I want to invite you to sit at the table of plenty. With me and so many others, I'm telling you, there's abundance here. There is overflow here. There's so much joy here. I'm here to tell you that God is for you. All you have to do is open your heart right now. He's waiting for you. He wants to meet with you. And I'm so proud of you. If you just made that decision, I'd love to know you. Shoot me a text, that number in the show notes, so I could pray for you. My friends, I love you. God loves you. And until the next time we chat, I'll talk to y'all next time. Thank you so much for being here.